Hey everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe with Kay Cabot and Ashley Bastock here at the Combine on a Friday. We're going a little old school today. This is audio only, so no video version, but most of our pods do go on video, so head over to Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com to check out our pods on video, just not today's. And we are going to talk quarterbacks here at the Combine. We are getting out of here on Saturday afternoon, offensive lineman talk tomorrow, but today it was quarterbacks, it was wide receivers, it was running backs, and of course those first two position groups. Mary Kay, very important to the Cleveland Browns. We don't know if they're going to take a quarterback in this draft. I imagine at some point they will, but they obviously need one. And then of course wide receiver, they certainly need one or two of those at least. So let's just kind of go through some of these names at quarterback. And I think the guy who I guess has gained the most momentum. We know Fernando Mendoza is going to go number one overall, most likely. So I don't think any of us actually went over and listened to Fernando today. But we did listen to Ty Simpson, and you put a story up about Ty Simpson. This is interesting, kind of the pecking order of this quarterback group, because there's going to be some other guys we talk about that I think, based on where they might get picked versus where maybe you would have to pick Ty Simpson, maybe there's value discussions, all of that stuff. But your first impressions of Ty today?
Well, I really liked his personality. He seems very, very smart, very thoughtful, very polished. He did a really nice job with his interview. He answered all the questions really, really well. And I just got a great first impression of him as a person. And then from a football standpoint, it's kind of interesting because his dad played at Southern Miss, his dad Jason, who is the UT Martin head football coach right now. He played at Southern Miss, where Todd Monken used to be the head coach in 2013, 2015. And those two guys know each other really, really well. And when I talked to Ty Simpson a little bit one-on-one after his podium interview, he said that those guys text back and forth all the time. They're good friends, and they just know each other really well. And he said that his dad would be like over the moon excited if Ty Simpson landed in Cleveland, and he knows he would be in really good hands. And he cited his work with Lamar Jackson and just his ability to develop quarterbacks, knows he would be in great hands. So he was excited about the notion of coming to Cleveland. He has met with them, as have other quarterbacks in this class. Is it realistic for them to draft Ty Simpson? I can't honestly say that I think it is super realistic, but they will at least consider him. They're doing their diligence, and you never know how far a guy is going to fall. And were they going to end up with Shedeur last year? No. That was not the plan.
Especially in the fifth round.
Yeah, it wasn't the plan. So you never really know. If it becomes a value pick, then I think that they might pull the trigger. But heading into it right now, my gut feeling is that they probably won't end up with him.
So, Ashley, he's such an interesting guy because he hasn't started a lot of games, which that's usually a red flag. But you also kind of look at the reasons that he hasn't started a lot of games. He goes to Alabama. He's behind Jalen Milroe. There was that weird game where they either benched Jalen Milroe or there's the conspiracy theories out there on Alabama message boards that maybe Jalen was suspended for that game, whatever. Ty Simpson started that game. Then they went back to Jalen Milroe. But you don't see guys in this day and age wait their turn. Like, it just doesn't happen. They don't sit and wait for their opportunity. They go someplace else. They go to another SEC school. They do something that where they can go start. So while it's not great that he hasn't started a bunch of games, it is kind of great how loyal he was. And I think that probably means something in all of this. And for a stretch this season, he was kind of pushing to maybe be QB1 in this class until really towards the end of the year. So I just think a really interesting situation with him.
Yeah, I mean, Todd Monken even brought that up on Wednesday, obviously, the fact that he did stick it out at Alabama. And we know, obviously, we've talked about this, Todd's a bit more old school mixed with new school and the analytics side. But that sort of stuff, I think it could be meaningful to the Browns and to a head coach like him, and obviously the familial connection that Mary Kay detailed on top of it all. So that's what is interesting. And again, like you said, he kind of had worked his way up into that conversation at different points. But Fernando Mendoza, obviously, IU going undefeated, winning the national title, that just sort of was the perfect example of how a quarterback can just skyrocket towards the end of a college football season.
So, Mary Kay, when you talk about Ty, I mean, is there, so somebody just randomly, it was actually, it was Jimmy Watkins who crossed paths with him in the hallway earlier this week, and he said, how far would Ty Simpson have to fall for the Browns to take him? And I just kind of flippantly said, 24. And that still might be too high. But how far would he have to fall, do you think, for the Browns to actually consider taking him? Is 24? I mean, they could fall in love with him, I guess, and take him at 6, but I don't think that's going to happen. Could 24 be in play?
I think 24 could possibly be in play, and so could 39 if he falls that far. But because he is widely regarded as the second best quarterback in this class, I'm guessing he might not even last till 24. Now, when he was getting ready to come out, everyone told his dad that he had a first-round grade on him and that he would go in the first round this year. So that's kind of what they're expecting. And when we talked to him today, he said, I'm ready. I'm a franchise quarterback. I'm prepared for this. I played in a pro-style offense. I know how to do this. And he was very, very confident about that. So I think somebody is going to get a good quarterback who's ready to play some football early on in his pro career. But I just look at the Cleveland Browns right now, and I see that they have Shedeur. They started him for 7 games. And I just don't know if Ty is enough to overtake Shedeur right now. And we'll see in the final analysis whether that will prove to be a good decision or a bad decision. But I think that somebody's really going to have to kind of knock their socks off this year for them to want to move away from Shedeur.
And I think they've been really dead set. Like we talked yesterday about, do we believe what they're saying about the quarterback position? And you could make an argument, maybe you shouldn't, whatever. But I think when it comes to the roster, and especially because we hear it from the owner too, who's kind of been the most honest guy through all of this over the last couple of years, they are so dead set on really making sure they do this thing right this time that I think just reaching for a quarterback at 6 isn't going to happen. They would have to love the guy. And I think the same at 24. They would have to love the guy because when you take a guy in the first round, he's your starter. Like, you are committing to him. Now, if you take him in the 30s, or when did New Orleans take Tyler Shook? Was that 40 overall? So you take him in that range. Yeah, you want him to be a starter, but you can kind of get away with just kind of calling that a flyer on a guy. So you're not as committed necessarily to him having to be your starter. You take Ty Simpson in the first round, he's got to be your starting quarterback, and he's got to be your starter for a long time. So I think that's why they might not reach, because, Ashley, they're just so committed, I think, to trying to do this the right way, which is why we're staying here till Saturday to talk to offensive linemen.
Yeah, it just seems like there's so many other obviously pressing needs for them on offense, and the way Andrew has talked about this offseason and this process of building out the roster for 2026. He's talked about the offense holistically. He's talked about committing a lot of resources this year on the offensive side of the ball. And we know the O-line situation, not ideal for them to be in, obviously. They could be looking at replacing all 5 starters from week 1, potentially. We don't know for sure that's going to happen. Obviously, the Joel Bitonio decision probably is going to come sometime in the next week and a half or whatever here. But they need to get better there. They need to add more pass catchers in that receiver room. That's a big need. So this just has never been a front office that is going to reach beyond where they value a guy. We've seen it time and time again. And look, even with Shedeur Sanders, the value for them at that point, they've talked about this, picking him in the 5th round where they did, and yes, trading up to get him, the value was so immense in their eyes there, which is why they did it. So they're not going to reach and get a quarterback just because, Ty Simpson's the next best quarterback in this draft, and we have to take him at 6 now. That's just not something they've ever done.
So as we get into other quarterbacks, and something that I've thought about is, if it's coming down to taking a chance on Ty Simpson, if I'm not completely sure, in the first round, or maybe taking another guy who might be available on day 2 or even early day 3, maybe that would be my lean, because this is sort of the quarterback class of like damaged goods. And I'm thinking of, Garrett Nussmeier, who we talked to today, Drew Allar, who we talked to today. Now, Nussmeier has at some point been considered by some to be the best quarterback in the class. Now, that faded this past year, and he talked about that injury, and he talked about that season today. Drew Allar was kind of supposed to be that guy, and it just never materialized at Penn State. But that's the other piece of this, Mary Kay. Like, let's just take a guy like Garrett Nussmeier, who, after they beat Clemson, everybody was in love with him. But he suffered this injury in fall camp before the season started. He said today it didn't get diagnosed properly until like 2 months ago. So he's finally been able to rehab it. LSU was a mess. They fired Brian Kelly. Like, their season just didn't go the way they wanted it to go. But there is something in there that people loved this guy coming out of last year. And then, like I said, after week 1 of this very last college football season, people were calling him quarterback 1 for a little while. So if you're going to take a flyer on a guy, I think he should be in the mix too. And then we'll talk a little bit about Drew Allar as well. It's a different situation, but I'm really interested to see where Garrett Nussmeier, somebody on our Twitter said, I'm really trying hard to make Garrett Nussmeier happen. I don't know if that's the case. Lance Reisland might be, but I think he's an interesting case because we've seen a guy that I think has shown us some real NFL traits.
Well, he falls, in my mind, into the bucket of, if you feel like you want to take a look at another developmental quarterback ahead of Dillon Gabriel, then you start to look at the Nussmeiers and the Allers and the Carson Becks and the Cade Klubniks and those kinds of guys in this draft, right? So that's where you might find some value for one of those next tier of quarterbacks, depending on how far they fall. If you feel like you've seen enough of Dillon Gabriel, and you still need another quarterback, a third quarterback, a developmental quarterback, that's where you might start to do this when you've got 10 picks in this draft. And it makes sense to take quarterbacks and develop them and see what you can get out of them when you have that many picks. So I would not ever be opposed to taking a flyer on a quarterback at a value spot, and there are enough of them in this draft that it could happen.
And the thing about Nussmeier too, obviously has the bloodlines. His dad's a coach. He's got a little Baker Mayfield in him. And when he was asked for his top 5 quarterbacks in the league right now, I'll give him some benefit of the doubt. He was kind of put on the spot, and I think he kind of ran out of people to say. He did say he likes watching Baker Mayfield and called him one of his top 5 quarterbacks. And I think he's probably about Baker's height. I don't know. He maybe ends up a little bigger, but he's not the biggest guy in the world. So there's a little Baker Mayfield there in Garrett Nussmeier. He's got a little bit of that edge to him too. But if you're going to be a guy who's going to have to go from maybe being the anointed quarterback, and now you've got to work your way up from being a second or third rounder, you kind of need that chip on your shoulder a little bit, Ashley.
Yeah, I think that edge helps some guys, right? And look, we've brought up that injury, that oblique injury. Did he say what exactly the injury was today?
Okay. So this is, to me, this is a little concerning.
Yeah.
Is that he talked about the injury and mentioned that it had only been diagnosed 2 months ago and that he's close to 100%, but he would not just come out and say what the injury was.
Yeah, so like the speculation online was always like if it was an actual oblique tear versus like just a strain or something. But the thing is with these quarterbacks, and like I just think it's worth like bearing repeating again, that the oblique and core muscle injuries are a big, big deal for that position. We talked about it. You can go back and find the podcast from the joint practice with the Philadelphia Eagles last summer when Shedeur Sanders was sidelined because of an oblique injury. Like, these teams are very, very cautious at the NFL level when it comes to those injuries. In college, like, I don't know if a guy says he's fine. There's all this stuff at stake. The season's shorter, NIL money, keeping recruits, keeping your current roster, all these things. Like, I think a bit more maybe slides through when at the NFL level it just wouldn't because of how cautious they are. So that part about him has always been interesting to me. And like to the larger point here, when we're talking about Ty Simpson versus like these value guys, like that's kind of why it just makes more sense for them to potentially go after one of the value guys if they do want to add a quarterback because there's just more of them. Like, you're going to get more bang for your buck, so to speak.
Yeah, and he mentioned too that when you're playing with that oblique injury, you develop some bad habits, and so he's got to kind of relearn some things off of those bad habits he developed last year. So I don't know. I think if there is a guy that I would bet on whose maybe stock dropped during the season, but you could rescue something out of him, I think he'd be on that list. Ty Simpson. I don't know that his stock ever really dropped necessarily. His stock has pretty much been rising. So I don't know if I'd put him in that class. He's kind of in a different bucket of guys. Now, Drew Allar's the other one. Medina native, Browns fan, broke his ankle in November. When he came out of high school, anybody you talk to saw him in high school. And I saw just a little bit of him in high school. But everybody else who's seen a lot of him, they think he's the best quarterback they've seen. I talked to somebody who saw Joe Burrow play in high school, and they think Drew Allar in high school was better than Joe Burrow. So he goes to Penn State, and it just never quite reaches the level it should have reached, Mary Kay. But again, it's the draft of damaged goods. So now this is a guy that maybe initially wasn't getting big offers in high school, then finally started to get them, stayed loyal to Penn State, and now he's coming to the NFL, and everybody's kind of like, I don't know. But he's going to try and get their attention again coming off of that injury, and I don't know if the Browns would take him, but look, everybody loves a good hometown, Northeast Ohio, Cleveland, Medina story.
Well, it's a case of what have you done for me lately?
Yes.
And you have a tendency to forget about the guys that suffer an injury like that, and they don't get to finish out their season. They don't get to finish strong, and you sort of forget the film from before and what their reputation was and those kinds of things. So I think somebody is going to get a really good value pick with Drew Allar. I don't know if it'll be the Cleveland Browns or not, but I think there are a number of guys in this class that are going to be quality NFL starters. And you never know how it's going to hit, who's going to hit, and quite often, one or two of them are the surprise of the draft. It happens all the time. And so why not him? I mean, he could be that. So I do think that if I were drafting, and if I were in charge of the Cleveland Browns draft this year, I probably would take the best one of these quarterbacks that we're all talking about today and bring them onto the team and develop them and see what you have. Because they have enough picks, and who knows, they might even end up with more picks by the time they get to draft day. But you can never go wrong, in my mind, with taking a good, young, developmental quarterback at a value spot. And I know Andrew said the other day that he's absolutely not opposed to doing that either. And remember, back in the day, Ron Wolf of the Green Bay Packers, his philosophy was take a quarterback every year and develop him. I mean, you just kind of can't go wrong in that way. It's the most important position. And if you see something in someone, why not take a chance?
Ashley, did you ever get to watch him in high school?
No, it's crazy. That was the 1 year I worked at the Akron Beacon Journal, and Medina's just on that cusp.
Okay.
Of the coverage area, but they're in which conference are they in? Is it this or?
They are in the, oh my gosh.
Oh my God, this
I
is
should
so
know
bad.
this.
I went to Amherst for anyone listening to this and screaming at their car, so we never played Medina in anything, so I don't know what conference
they're in. I'm blanking on the conference
Dan
name.
should
I know it because, when I saw him play, it was against, my kids have been in the Stowe band now for a while, and so I'll go and watch the games and watch the band show. So I actually saw him play against Stowe, and they're in the same conference, I think, but I don't remember what
Suburban League. Are
maybe
they in the Suburban
Sure,
League?
we'll call it the Suburban League.
Well, I don't know. I haven't covered prep sports in 5 years, so no one scream at me. But no, I remember the hype around him. You would want to get assigned one of those games because that was really around the time his recruitment was ramping up. And being from Lorain County, I do remember when Medina played Lorain football, and James Franklin at the time flew in and was at that game to watch him. So yeah, I never really got to see him, but I remember the way people talked about him, similar to what you're saying, Dan, that it was just expected. Even back then, people were like, well, maybe in 4 years he can come and help the Browns. That was kind of the expectation, which is wild to think about.
Yeah, again, you talk to people, this is not just me saying this, you talk to people who really, covered him in high school, and they'll tell you, better than Mitch Trubisky, better than Joe Burrow in high school. That's not saying he would be a better pro than those guys, but just really, again, that talent is really fascinating.
They're currently in the Greater Cleveland Conference.
Okay, Greater Cleveland Conference.
That includes Strongsville and Brunswick, apparently. Okay. But they're going to be in the Suburban League starting in 2026, 2027. This is according to Google. So
okay.
There we go.
See, I got all that wrong too. All right. Well, that was our high school football minute here on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Let's talk receivers real quick. Obviously, the focus today was the quarterbacks, but I do think something interesting with this receiver class is all the different shapes, all the different sizes, all the different styles, especially the guys that are potentially high in the draft. So if you're looking for a shifty, versatile guy, there's plenty of those. If you're looking for a big target, there's plenty of those. And Ashley, there's also someone with a kind of Cleveland tie. So I thought, that's interesting. And you wrote about that today. And you were over there for Jordyn Tyson. Yeah. And you've covered some Cavs games, so maybe there could be a Cleveland reunion with his brother Jaylon.
Yeah, there could be. And I've heard Jaylon Tyson will talk to anyone in that locker room about Jordyn Tyson, his younger brother who starred at Arizona State. And it was really interesting to get to talk to him today. I told Mary Kay as I was walking out, I kind of hope the Browns draft him just because he was such a good and fun interview. And we've covered a lot of quiet receivers on this team over the last 5 or 6 years. So it would kind of be a breath of fresh air in that position group. But he's a really interesting guy. He started his career at Colorado. He left, he transferred. I think it was right after Deion Sanders, or right as Deion Sanders was coming in to take over the program. He didn't play with Shedeur. He didn't play for Deion. He transferred to ASU after 1 year. And what really helped elevate him is when ASU hired Hines Ward to coach their receivers and be an assistant head coach. And he talked a lot today about that influence, learning from a Super Bowl MVP and how key that was. I think he's interesting because he's a really precise route runner. It just feels like the Browns haven't had that since Amari Cooper's last really good season in 2023. But what's also interesting about him, and he loves his route running, you can tell he's like Amari Cooper in that way. He likes to talk routes and the mechanics of routes. And that was interesting. But he also, I think, doesn't get enough credit for his contested catch ability because he is a little bit bigger. He's 6'2", 195, but he can play anywhere. And he also prides himself on that. He's like, I can play in the slot. I can play outside. He's done it all. And growing up with his brother, they have another brother as well that played college football. Their dad played football. He said they were competing at everything, whether it was ping pong, par 3, golf courses, bowling, basketball, football, that's a big part of what gave him his toughness. And I thought he was really earnest today talking about what it would mean to play in Cleveland with Jaylon. And he said that he thinks just seeing him on a day-to-day basis and seeing Jaylon Tyson in his element would really help him elevate his own game and his own habits, and that his work ethic, so much of it comes from Jaylon already. So I thought it was pretty cool, the connection there.
I wonder if he knows that if the Browns drafted him, he'd be sharing a locker room with part owner of his brother's team, with Myles Garrett. They can talk like contracts and stuff like that. Mary Kay, again, this receiver class is really interesting. Carnell Tate's a guy to talk today. I kind of listened to him for a little while. I don't know. I don't know if the Browns are going to take a receiver at 6 or if they trade down, take one at 9 or 12 or wherever they would end up. But at some point in this draft, early, whether it's with 24 or early on day 2, whatever it is, they're going to have to add some young receivers, even if they add some in free agency.
Absolutely 100%. And I am very, very big on receivers and how important excellent receivers are and weapons are. And I would have no problem with them taking a receiver at number 6 overall. So I would be all for it. I actually think it's a premium pick, and I would do that in a heartbeat. A great receiver can be so game-changing, and we saw that this year, even in the playoffs, and it just makes a huge difference. It doesn't matter who you put back there at quarterback if you don't supply them with enough weapons. So the thing for the Browns right now is they need offensive linemen, And I think they need receivers. Maybe I think that more than they think that. I know that they are very confident that they're going to get the most out of Jerry Jeudy this year. And they really feel like he's going to bounce back and be rehabilitated in this new offense and that he's going to be okay. But I still think they need at least 2 other Pro Bowl caliber type of receivers on this team. You can't have too many weapons like that in today's passing game and in Todd Monken's offense. If you want to be explosive, you have to have those horses. So I would not be opposed to it. But of course, if you're going to do that, you have to make sure that you are restocking the line in other ways. Maybe you're making a trade for one. Maybe you are signing one in free agency. Maybe you are getting Joel Bitonio back. If you can do some things like that, then I'm all for taking a receiver at number 6. Maybe it's Carnell Tate if he's still there. He walked right past me today. What a tall, lanky receiver he is. And I think they need a guy like that, just with that explosive ability and the wingspan and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a receiver guy, always have been, and I think they need more.
It's funny. We were actually I went to the Pacers game last night with a group of people, and then we went to dinner after. We were talking about premium positions, like what are they? Mm-hmm. And I had mentioned receiver, I think fits in that. Now I think there's a certain caliber of receiver that you would have to be for me to take you in the top 5. And that's when we're talking like Jamar Chase or Jeremiah Smith next year, right? He might be the top prospect in next year's draft. I don't know if any of those guys fall into that exact category, but the Browns aren't in the top 5, first of all. It's number 6. So I would absolutely take a receiver at number 6. I don't know if Andrew agrees with me on that. And when it comes to the O-line, there are plenty of guys, too. We're going to talk to Monroe Freeling tomorrow. He might be a guy who's there in the 20s. There'll be guys, again, in the 2nd or 3rd round. You have more than just that one pick, so they'll be able to address that, hopefully, in whatever they do. But if they're not going to invest heavily in quarterback, that makes wide receiver even more of a premium pick because you have to make sure everything around the quarterbacks works. So that includes the line, that includes the pass catchers, that includes the run game, and then that makes everything easier for the quarterback until you're ready to kind of go all in and make that investment in a guy.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, that's interesting with all of this for the people who are just take a tackle at 6 and move on. Well, the thing is, the tackle class is pretty deep. You're going to be able, potentially, I think, to still get a good one at 24 if there is a receiver you like higher. And, I'm really curious to see how the board shakes out because I've already seen mock drafts where, the Cavs. I'm going back to Jaylon Tyson. I'm talking about Jordyn Tyson. But with the Browns trading back from 6 and winding up still in the top 15. I think the last one I saw was them at 12 and trading with Dallas. If there's someone enticing that someone else wants, you can trade back into the teens. Jordyn Tyson is a guy that's probably going to be there around then because the receivers are interesting as well. So that to me even is top 6 a little high for him given, the Carnell Tate of it all and the rest of the class maybe. But you might be able to get something and then still get a pretty good receiver in the first round, high enough.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of guys at both of those positions that they can sort of do this however they want to do it and build this thing out a little bit. If they don't end up, to bring it all back, if they don't end up just taking Ty Simpson or something like that. Okay. That will do it for this edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Full week of pods for you. If you missed any of them, go back on Apple Pods, Spotify. Find all of our Combine pods from this week. Find us on YouTube, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com, and all of our socials. If you have a social media account, go search Orange and Brown Talk. You will find us and give us follows there. For Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.